Pat Morita, born Noriyuki Morita on June 28, 1932, in the small delta town of Isidon, California, entered a world already stacked against him. His parents, Tamaru and Momo, were Japanese immigrants who came to the United States seeking seasonal work in the Sacramento Valley, moving wherever fruit harvests demanded labor. Life for migrant families like the Moritas was exhausting and harsh, with long hours in the fields for barely enough money to survive. Their home was a cramped cabin with dirt floors and no running water. Noriyuki, the youngest child, lived under the shadow of his much older brother Hideo, who was already 12 years his senior. From an early age, Noriyuki experienced the crushing weight of poverty, isolation, and the sense of being left behind, both within his family and the world outside. While other children played, he endured hardship that would shape his resilience for the rest of his life. At the age of 2, he began suffering from severe back pain, crying for days on end, and his parents could not afford a doctor. Only outside pressure from ranch owners forced them to seek help, and Noriyuki was admitted to the Weiheimer Institute near Sacramento. There, doctors delivered the grim diagnosis: spinal tuberculosis, also known as Pott's disease, which had already damaged his vertebrae and threatened his life. In an era before antibiotics, this condition often led to death, particularly among poor children. Charity hospitals were the only lifeline for families like the Moritas, and so the toddler found himself immersed in a world of medical walls, routines, and isolation that would dominate nearly a decade of his young life. The treatment prescribed was as severe as the illness itself. To prevent further spinal collapse, doctors encased young Noriyuki in a plaster body cast that ran from shoulders to knees. For 21 months, he lay immobilized, staring at ceilings, walls, and shadows as time crept forward without him. Every moment of this early childhood was spent confined, unable to roll, crawl, or play like other children. By 1938, he was transferred to Shriners Hospital in San Francisco, another facility treating children from families who could not pay, where he spent much of the next 5 years alternating between beds and treatment rooms. The wards were full of children, many of whom were gravely ill, and the fear of death lingered constantly in hushed conversations. Visits from family were infrequent, and after the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, the looming presence of war only intensified the sense of separation and instability. Yet within the sterile confines of hospitals, Noriyuki discovered a remarkable survival tool: humor. He learned to lighten the room with jokes, improvisations, and playful interactions, transforming fear and pain into small moments of joy. This ability to find laughter amid suffering became a defining characteristic of his personality, something that would later shape his comedic timing and stage presence in Hollywood. A Catholic priest at Weimar, Father O'Connor, treated him like a person rather than a fragile patient, joking with him and making promises that left lasting impressions. One such promise inspired Noriyuki's future stage name, Patrick Aloysius Ignatius Xavier Morita, which he later shortened to Pat Morita, holding on to the memory as a personal talisman in the face of a childhood dominated by illness, confinement, and the challenges of identity. Even after surviving nearly a decade of immobilization, Noriyuki's challenges were far from over. At age 11, he underwent a major spinal fusion surgery at Shriners, a procedure fraught with risk, including potential paralysis or death. Wartime shortages added to the difficulty, but advances in medicine, including the widespread availability of penicillin, gave him a fighting chance. The operation was a success, yet recovery demanded months of relearning basic movements, crawling, standing, and taking those first wobbly steps, each one like crossing an ocean. By October 1943, he was able to walk unaided, a physical triumph celebrated by staff who had witnessed his long struggle. However, freedom from illness was replaced by another kind of confinement. The United States government, following Executive Order 9066, forced Japanese American families into internment camps after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Noriyuki and his family were sent first to the Gila River War Relocation Center in Arizona, where he experienced the alienation of being treated with suspicion by the country he called home. Later, in 1945, they were moved to Tule Lake, a camp for those labeled disloyal. For a boy whose formative years had been defined by hospital wards and medical supervision, these internment camps presented a new kind of isolation. He struggled with language barriers, generational gaps within the Japanese-American community, and the ever-present heat, dust, and monotony of camp life. This period, stretching from ages 11 to 13, further shaped his ability to observe, survive, and adapt, skills that would later inform his performances on stage and screen. After the war, the Morita family returned to California, eventually settling in Fairfield. Life remained difficult, but the family tried to rebuild, opening a small restaurant in Sacramento called Ariak Chop Suey. In this environment, young Pat learned the art of timing, showmanship, and audience engagement. He often acted as the MC during dinners, entertaining crowds of 50 to 100 people, and developing skills that would translate seamlessly into his later comedy career. Yet life continued to test him. His father died in a tragic hit-and-run accident in 1956, leaving Pat and his mother to manage the family business. By the early 1960s, Pat sought stability through conventional employment, taking work at the California DMV and later at aerospace companies, including Aerojet General. Despite stable employment, he felt confined, and at age 30, he made the bold decision to quit and pursue comedy full-time, often performing in small clubs for minimal pay. His early years on stage were grueling, with frequent failures and challenging audiences, but he used his life experiences, pain, isolation, and resilience to craft a bold, sharp persona that could command attention and turn adversity into humor. Mentorship from figures like Red Fox and performances on national television programs helped him gradually build recognition, but Hollywood continued to limit opportunities for Asian actors, seeing him largely as a comic figure rather than a serious actor. The defining turning point came in the early 1980s when John G. Avildsen, fresh off the success of Rocky, recognized Morita's potential for the role of Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid. Despite initial resistance from producers who labeled him a sitcom comic unfit for dramatic weight, Morita endured multiple auditions, chemistry reads with Ralph Macchio, and persistent scrutiny. Drawing from his personal history, the pain of illness, internment, and societal prejudice, he infused Miyagi with quiet authority, warmth, and depth. The result was a performance that earned him an Academy Award nomination and cemented his legacy. Morita insisted on authenticity, performing key sequences himself, including the now iconic wax-on, wax-off training scenes, even though his body had been weakened by childhood health challenges. His dedication to the role reflected a lifetime of resilience, observation, and humor forged in the harshest of circumstances. Morita's success in the Karate Kid franchise not only brought him fame, but also demonstrated the power of lived experience in shaping compelling performances. His ability to transform personal hardship into a character that resonated universally proved that authenticity and perseverance could break barriers, even in a Hollywood reluctant to embrace actors of Asian descent in leading, complex roles. After the breakthrough success of The Karate Kid in 1984, Pat Morita's life transformed almost overnight. Suddenly, the world recognized him not just as a comedian, but as a serious actor capable of delivering subtle emotional depth. The role of Mr. Miyagi, a wise mentor with a calm presence, resonated with audiences of all ages, making Morita a household name. His performance brought a balance of humor, philosophy, and quiet authority that was rarely seen in Hollywood at the time, especially from actors of Asian descent. Yet even with this newfound fame, Morita faced a Hollywood industry that still had deep-seated biases. Casting directors often pigeonholed Asian actors into stereotypical roles, limiting opportunities for nuanced characters. Despite his Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, many producers still saw him primarily as a comic figure, often offering roles that reduced him to one-dimensional caricatures. Morita was keenly aware of these limitations, but refused to let them define his career. Instead, he used his visibility to carefully select projects that would showcase his range, even if opportunities were sparse. His approach reflected the same determination that had allowed him to survive childhood illness, internment camps, and years of struggle on the comedy circuit. In interviews, Morita often spoke about the tension between commercial success and personal integrity. He recognized that accepting certain roles could be financially rewarding, yet he wanted his work to carry meaning, depth, and authenticity. This balancing act defined much of his career in the late 1980s and early 1990s, as he navigated a system reluctant to give him the same respect offered to his white contemporaries. Morita expanded his career into television, where he found more consistent opportunities to develop his comedic talents while still exploring dramatic roles. He appeared on popular shows including Happy Days and MASH*, often drawing on his natural charm, quick wit, and ability to connect with audiences. Television offered a platform that film sometimes could not: the ability to grow a character over multiple episodes or seasons. For instance, his recurring appearances allowed him to develop nuanced personas that audiences could relate to, blending humor with subtle commentary on identity and cultural experience. Beyond traditional acting, Morita also explored voice work, lending his distinctive tone to animated projects and commercials. This diversification of his career reflected his pragmatic understanding of Hollywood's limitations. By embracing multiple mediums, he could maintain visibility, earn a living, and continue honing his craft. While some critics questioned whether he had been typecast, Morita's performances consistently demonstrated intelligence, timing, and empathy. He often spoke candidly about the challenges of being an Asian actor in an industry that remained dominated by white narratives, noting that his early experiences with discrimination had given him the resilience to navigate rejection without losing confidence or humor. For Morita, each audition was not just a chance to secure work. It was a test of patience, perseverance, and the ability to translate life's struggles into compelling performances. In addition to television and film, Morita remained connected to stand-up comedy, where he began his career decades earlier. Comedy had been a lifeline throughout his life, allowing him to process pain, navigate social isolation, and develop confidence in front of an audience. He often incorporated stories from his childhood, his experiences in hospitals and internment camps, and his observations of everyday life into routines that were both relatable and insightful. Audiences appreciated his ability to mix humor with humanity, crafting jokes that were never mean-spirited, but instead highlighted universal truths. Morita also emphasized the importance of discipline and timing, lessons learned from years of medical confinement and early struggles with physical limitations. Comedy, for him, was more than entertainment. It was a way to connect, to bridge cultural gaps, and to demonstrate that resilience could be transformed into art. This perspective not only informed his live performances, but also deeply influenced his portrayal of Mr. Miyagi, who used humor, patience, and unconventional teaching methods to mentor Daniel LaRusso. Morita's ability to draw on personal experience to inform his art became a hallmark of his career, earning him both critical praise and audience affection. Despite the accolades and growing public recognition, Morita's journey was not without setbacks. Hollywood's persistent typecasting meant he often had to fight for roles that offered depth rather than reliance on racial stereotypes. Morita, unlike many of his contemporaries, refused to accept demeaning portrayals, which occasionally led to long periods without work. In interviews, he recounted times when producers assumed he could only play a wise Asian mentor or comedic sidekick, disregarding his ability to perform dramatic roles, action sequences, or even romantic leads. Yet these challenges did not deter him. Morita's philosophy, shaped by years of overcoming physical and societal obstacles, was simple yet powerful. Perseverance, preparation, and authenticity would eventually open doors, even in an industry slow to change. By the 1990s, he had achieved a level of respect that allowed him to mentor younger actors, advocate for better representation of Asian Americans, and carefully select projects that aligned with his principles. His advocacy, subtle yet impactful, helped pave the way for future generations of Asian actors, contributing to a gradual shift in Hollywood's perception of what Asian performers could achieve. Morita's legacy, therefore, extends beyond his roles on screen. It includes his commitment to changing the narrative and creating space for others in an industry historically resistant to diversity. In the years following the Karate Kid trilogy, Pat Morita continued to build a career that combined his signature warmth with a deeper exploration of dramatic roles. While he remained best known for the character of Mr. Miyagi, he understood that being remembered for a single role could be both a blessing and a limitation. Morita consciously sought projects that allowed him to demonstrate versatility, taking on characters in movies and television shows that ranged from comedic to profoundly emotional. His ability to bring authenticity and empathy to every performance became increasingly recognized by critics and audiences alike. Despite the challenges of typecasting that had marked much of his earlier career, Morita's persistence paid off. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, he had established himself as a respected figure in Hollywood who could carry roles beyond the narrow expectations placed on Asian actors. Moreover, his continued work in television, including guest spots on popular shows and appearances in family-friendly films, helped keep his image relatable and beloved by audiences of all ages. Morita's philosophy toward his career remained consistent. He valued roles that reflected truth, emotional depth, and cultural authenticity over those that merely offered fame or financial gain. This approach often required patience, as many opportunities fell through due to Hollywood's ongoing reluctance to cast Asian actors in leading or complex roles. Yet Morita never compromised on his principles, which earned him both respect within the industry and admiration from fans who appreciated his integrity. In addition to his acting career, Morita invested considerable energy in advocacy and mentorship. He understood the importance of representation and sought to create pathways for younger Asian American actors navigating the same obstacles he had faced. He frequently spoke at industry panels, workshops, and schools about the need for diversity in casting, emphasizing that the presence of Asian actors in varied roles would not only enrich storytelling but also help shift public perceptions. Morita also offered guidance and encouragement to aspiring performers, often sharing lessons from his own life, the importance of discipline, resilience, and self-belief. These mentorship efforts were not only a reflection of his personal character, but also a deliberate strategy to leave a positive imprint on Hollywood's evolving landscape. As the 1990s progressed, Morita balanced his continued acting work with public speaking, charity events, and writing. He recognized that his influence extended beyond the screen. By using his platform to advocate for inclusion, he became a subtle but important force in reshaping the industry. His efforts mirrored the philosophy of his most famous character. By guiding others and sharing wisdom, he could create long-term impact far beyond immediate visibility or acclaim. Morita's personal life, though often private, offered insights into the man behind the fame. He experienced both challenges and joys, navigating relationships, family life, and health concerns with the same resilience that characterized his career. Friends and colleagues often described him as warm, generous, and deeply humorous, a person capable of making others feel comfortable even under the pressures of Hollywood's spotlight. Morita's early experiences with illness and wartime internment had left an indelible mark, shaping a worldview grounded in empathy, patience, and humor. These qualities not only informed his performances, but also defined his interactions off-screen. Despite the pressures of fame,